What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Scouting the Fins right here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, also part of the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast feed. What happened today might not have been an accident by this Miami Dolphins team, but in case one does happen to you, you need to be ready. After an accident, your first move should be calling 305-800-PAIN. Better Business Bureau credit with an A+ rating. Your car accident personal injury specialist. Fast connection with trusted doctors and attorneys. Always ready to take your call 24/7. Again, 305-800-PAIN, 305-800-PAIN. And as always, this show is brought to you by ThompsonCigar.com. Use promo code 3yards20 for 20% off your order of $75 or more. Once again, use promo code 3yards20 for 20% off your order of $75 or more. The Miami Dolphins have won against the Buffalo Bills. Coach, Eric, they didn't just beat the Buffalo Bills. They kind of dismantled them 30-13 in a game that may feel like a statement from a team that could be finding their identity after a really bad loss against the Baltimore Ravens. For weeks, there were questions about the leadership, the locker room buy-in, and the direction of this franchise after the trade deadline. But on Sunday, these Dolphins didn't flinch. They believed and they executed.
Yeah, I mean, listen. So when it comes to the way they performed, I think this was kind of really reminiscent, at least to me, of what we saw 2 weeks ago in Atlanta. I don't know what happened against Baltimore. I kind of felt like they played really well in that first half, and they just kind of let a bunch of mistakes pile up. And obviously, we know in the NFL, when you have 3 or 4 of those mistakes that pile up, you can face a 17, 21-point deficit awfully quickly. So I think the 28-6 might have been a little bit of an anomaly against the Ravens, at least when you compare the fact that I think you can make the case that there was at least 17 points of a swing in that first half between fumbling inside the 10, the Larry Borum false start, the tripping penalty that wasn't on Ollie Gordon. But you look at what this team did, and just the balance offensively was phenomenal. It actually felt to me, at least offensively, very similar to the last time they beat Buffalo in Miami, where they were running the football effectively, and Tua was really kind of just an effective, kind of steady force for them. Obviously, he got hurt in that game, but he came back and he threw the big touchdown pass to Waddle and the touchdown pass over the middle. Again, very similar to kind of what we saw today. But I mean, the story is Devon Achane. I don't want to bury the lead with him. I think we need to start really talking about him as, one of the better running backs that the Dolphins have had in the last 10, 15, 20 years. The guy is absolutely special. But I think people are going to look at like the Tua stat line today and assume that he had a so-so game. Tua played a very good game today. You look at the situations in which he threw those 2 picks. They were both on 3rd and long. They were essentially arm punts, which is the function that they served. And if that's going to be kind of the, if you're going to make mistakes, I prefer them to be made out of aggression 100 times out of 100. So I thought that the balance today was really good, and we'll get to talking about the defense. I don't think that there's enough good things you can say about the way that they performed today. Interested to see what we're all going to have to say about some of the young corners that we saw on display, which I thought was really positive. But I think the word today is balance. Just all around, all 3 phases, they were really good today.
Oh, I don't think we can hear Coach on this. We just hear him mouthing some words. But we'll let Coach get a handle on this. And Eric, it wasn't a perfect game.
Now?
There he is.
There you go.
There he is, Coach.
I don't know what that was. Yeah, so I was going to say that, along the same lines there, Eric, that I was going to use the word complementary football. Um, across not only all three phases of the game, right? Offense, defense, special teams, but also the individual units within those teams. I'm not sure that we can look at any position group and say that any position group played bad today. Like there was some individual performers that could have played better, but across all three phases, it felt like every group kind of pulled their own weight. And you said about the Ravens game last week, and I agree completely that it felt like the Dolphins played better in the first half than the Ravens last week, and then stuff snowballed from there. And there were opportunities this week for that to happen, and that started from the very beginning of the game when they were flagged for a phantom false start by Alec Ingold, and then there was that you had to take a timeout, and it's like, what the hell are we doing already, right? And that felt like an awful start to the game. They were able to rebound to it and from that, and then Riley Patterson missing an extra point. Like we're going into halftime, it should be a 3-score game going into halftime, up 17-0, but you've missed a extra point. It's 16-0. I know for me going into halftime, kind of felt like the door was still open for Josh Allen to put the cape on and come back. And then you come out from the second half and start out with 2 consecutive penalties against the Dolphins there as well. But they, unlike when the bad stuff happened against the Ravens, they found a way to work through that. Even in that long drive in the second half, when they got down to the red zone, right? The defense came up with an interception to close the door there. I think that the depth kind of showed up a little bit. I know that we've talked about the talent on this roster, but we are also in year 4 of Mike McDaniel. I think that there were times in this game where we're starting to see a little bit of that depth show up, whether it was the tight end room where, we're finding tight ends that fit the system, right? Dulcich really fits what they want out of an F tight end, and we saw him playing that role well. Hayden Rucci did well in that Y position. We saw them continuing to go with the heavy offensive personnel. And then defensively, kind of feels like defensively they have 2 separate visions for what they want out of those starting cornerbacks, just different kind of skill sets. Because I know there's a little bit of surprise that it was Juju Brents getting the start over Ethan Bonner. But I was talking about that with my buddy Anthony Testino, and he was saying, maybe it comes down to them wanting a bigger corner on the other side because Ethan and Jack Jones are both kind of smaller guys. That could open up the door for the Bills to just screen them to death. So you put a bigger receiver or a bigger corner over there to match up with Keon Coleman, and Juju Brents had a very good game overall. And you saw the consequences when they had to go to Ethan Bonner. Bonner gave up the long play. I think it was a touchdown. And then you switch to Jason Marshall, who is, again, one of those bigger corners. And I felt like he played okay in his snaps as a perimeter corner before Juju came back. But, again, just going back to the idea that very complimentary game, not only from the 3 phases of the game, but also from each individual unit across those phases.
Yeah, it wasn't a perfect game from at least Tua and the offense, but they found their balance, and that balance was pretty much the difference. Devon A. Chain and Bradley Chubb pretty much said it. Once they are a balanced team, a balanced offense and defense, they can win. Uh, they need to continue to find this balance. Eric, you said it. You felt like Tua had a great game, even though he was 15 for 21, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, less than 200 yards. Uh, Even with those picks, he led the league in EPA per dropback this Sunday. He led the league in EPA per play with a plus 0.6. And even with those 2 interceptions and a little bit of miscues, 43% of his throws went for first downs today. The highest mark in the NFL this Sunday so far. Not only that, when the Dolphins are throwing out of jumbo personnel in a big 21 type of personnel with Dan Brunskill and Alec Ingold, 22 personnel as well with 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, either those 2 tight ends being Dulcich and Rucci, or one of them substituting in with Daniel Brunskill. EPA per dropback on that was 1.35, the second most today. Atlanta beat that EPA per play was at 0.09, which was third best today of 8 to 9 teams that ran 21 and 22 personnel. In terms of passing, just like that, Coach, we talked about it. It's a clean pocket for Tua most of the time when you have 6 or maybe even 7 blockers and you have 2 guys running deep routes that are having cuts or just juking out defenders that Jalen Waddle was able to, and sometimes even Greg Dulcich. That helped a lot. But also for the running game, Devon Achane was the engine today. 22 carries, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0.39 EPA per play, third best of any running back this week. 41% success rate and nearly 8 yards per carry. You've got a running back who's redefining what this offense can do when it's balanced. He also has 6 catches for 51 yards and almost 8 yards per reception as well.
Yeah, I thought Eric was going there. No, we talked about before about the jumbo set and getting Tua more comfortable in the pocket, and you saw that in the targets, because one of the things we talked about with that is that you can keep more pass protectors in, but you have to be able to trust your guys to win up front, or not up front. You have to win your one-on-one matchups as receivers, right? So there was 21 targets today, and 13 of those either went to Waddle or Achane. It was 7 to Waddle and 6 to Achane, right? So I felt like it was a very balanced game. They weren't in third and long situations, which is why I think a lot of those completions did turn into first downs, because we're not from second and third in long scenarios. We weren't having a lot of early penalties to set the offense back. So when you stay in those favorable down and distance positions, you can keep the defense off balance, and you saw that a lot. I don't think there was a lot of traditional drop back passing today. A lot of it was the play action, playing off the run game, and kind of capitalizing on the Bills defense being over aggressive flowing, right? I mean, they knew as well as everybody else that the main thing they had to do in this game was to stop Devon Achane and make Tua be the one to beat him. And they obviously were not. I mean, they kept him kind of contained for most of the game, but then when it counted, those runs were very much set up by allowing the defense to over pursue and taking advantage of it. So I just think that, again, from a play call perspective, from an execution perspective, just a very consistent game plan in terms of keeping the defense off balance with the play calls, not getting too crazy with it, not saying that we're putting the game on Tua's shoulders, so that when he was asked to do something, he was very effective with it. And kind of to Eric's point there, I agree completely on the essentially arm punts on the interceptions, right? I would prefer those every time versus you're trying to squeeze it into a tight window and those type of interceptions. If you take those away, and you can't take them away, I mean, through the interceptions, his completion percentage was really high as usual. Another thing that I would say about that, and maybe getting kind of ahead of myself here, was that a quarterback that is willing to give up those arm punt interceptions is not a quarterback that I think feels like his position is on a hot seat in terms of getting benched. I know that's been a topic recently with Tua, but if you're being, obviously in the fans and the media, there's been talk about him possibly being benched. I don't feel like if you are in that mindset that you're going to come out and let those throws go, knowing that there's probably no better than a 50% chance of it being completed, and that the idea there is that you're trying to go for either a penalty or an interception, right, and essentially pin him back there deep. So I just felt like, for me, it just felt like a team overall, including the quarterback, just very comfortable with where they are right now.
That's very funny you mentioned that, because that shows a reflection of trust between Tua and McDaniel. And in the presser today, Mike McDaniel told the media that he told Tua to rip it on third downs, even if it meant arm punts. That type of confidence bleeds into play design and timing, trust in the game plan. Early on, all of us, when we were watching, even the media, were like, oh, those were bad interceptions, bad picks. I guess it was just by design. If McDaniel is truthfully saying it was part of it. And Tua is saying that, we were trusting our guys to get open one-on-one, specifically Jalen Waddle. He said that initially he saw single high for, like, if he sees a look, just go ahead and throw up for it.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of dispute the notion that those are really bad interceptions, because I think when you take a look at where you are on the field and the down and distance, both of those interceptions occurred on 3rd and long. That you were past your own 30 on both of them. So I don't feel like, I mean, in terms of, all turnovers are bad to an extent, right? But I think when you're calculating, like, situationally, okay, how much does this actually hurt us? How many yards of field position are we losing on this individual play? Those types of interceptions really hurt you much, much, much less than, turning the ball over in the red zone or what have you. And I think that I think Tua threw those passes knowing the situation, maybe not expecting to throw picks, but I think he knew, okay, in this situation, if it is an interception, no harm, no foul, relatively. And sure, yeah, you can try to complete, the pass and get the first down. And, I think that that's kind of always the first idea. But if there's nothing there, why not see if you can draw the flag? And if you, flip the field and Buffalo starts with the ball at their own 20, okay, they were going to do that with a punt anyways. The other thing that I found really interesting about the game plan was you could tell Buffalo was, and you saw it in the first half. You mentioned some Buffalo really was aggressive in trying to stop Devon Achane, and I think at least in the first half, Miami really took advantage of it, because that's when you saw the passing game do most of its damage. Both of Tua's passing touchdowns were in that first half. The big play to Waddle, obviously the throw to Malik Washington. It kind of felt like, the Dolphins got that rhythm in the passing game in the first half. And then as Buffalo, kind of had to respect that passing game, and they couldn't just, keep doing that, keep keying in on HN all the time, especially in the second half when, and the defense was keeping Buffalo's defense on the field just about all day, and attrition goes into that. But, in that second half, Buffalo really started to kind of feel the run game of Miami wearing down on them. And I think the success of the passing game in the first half had a lot to do with that.
30 rushes, 21 passes, but the efficiency gap in that is where you see the evolutions. The Dolphins' offense completely blew away the Bills' offense in terms of metrics, and the Dolphins' defense completely blew away the Bills' defense as well. And Coach, you said it, when you're winning those early downs, and we talked about it for the last 2 seasons. When you win those early downs, everything opens up. If you take a look at the early down passing, 0.68 EPA for the Dolphins, and even for Tua, one of the highest single game marks this season. The offense wasn't necessarily chasing perfection. It was more so of staying on schedule, staying ahead of the sticks, chasing rhythm. And they knew if they could get out to a solid lead early on, Buffalo's defense and their linebackers would struggle with that play action depth and also the motion flow, especially in the run game where they wanted to make it happen. And then Buffalo's defense was just gassed midway through the second half. Devon Achane had 2.86 yards before contact per run, which tells you the blocking up front was great. Miami's offensive line was winning the trench battle, and not just because of Devon Achane's speed, but also his slickness. Both the offensive line and Devon Achane were able to synchronize and get those big runs for Miami.
Yeah, you were saying about the way that running the ball in the first half, really opens things up for the second half, because those big runs weren't coming in the second half or in the first half, but it felt like, they were staying committed to it, which they haven't always done in the past. And we know that the weather may not have been the same factor as a September game in Miami, but I can tell you that I live in the, further north in the United States, and it's not the same weather up here as it is down there, right? So when you get down there and you're keeping that Bills defense out there on the field, you're keeping that clock running, you're churning out first downs. That by the second half, the Bills were wore out. I think that factored into the big runs that happened. I mean, the second Achane touchdown, I'm not sure that he was touching the entire time. That crack toss to the left, and really, I mean, even the first one, like he made that guy miss in the hole, and then he kind of stiff arm Jordan Poyer as he's running by. But it's not like he had to do spectacular things. I mean, he did really nice things, especially the defender he made miss in the hole. But you saw as the game went on that those opportunities presented themselves. So I think that was a key thing to be able to stick with the run in the first half, even though they weren't necessarily getting the explosive plays out of it.
Eric, before your point, I wanted to quickly shout out the Dolphins wide receivers, specifically Westbrook-Akine, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and even the tight ends and Greg Dulcich, Hayden Rucci, and Daniel Brunskill. Those guys were able to work their blocks into the second level on a lot of these runs. It doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but man, were they also important in this run game. I saw a couple of blocks from Aaron Brewer that gave Achane some space. There was a play where Hayden Rucci also slipped up. It was actually the 59-yard touchdown run.
Yep.
Hayden Rucci actually slipped down, still went to his block, hit his landmark as well. It opened up the hole for Devon Achane. Just great execution by the offense in this run game.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, I mean, I even saw Daniel Brunskill made a block from his knees on one of those bigger runs in the second half. And the Dolphins talked a lot about playing with conviction this week, and when I heard them kind of explain what they meant by that, I smelled a little bit of Patriots on my Dolphins. Because really what they were saying was do your job, have conviction in doing what it is you're doing and trusting that your teammate is doing what he's supposed to do. This offense for the Dolphins, there is undoubtedly a lot of moving parts. But I think it really does just come down to each individual guy owning their own assignment. And if they're all doing that, we saw today what it looks like. We saw it against Atlanta, what it looks like. They can still be very effective.
Yeah. All right. Before we talk about this Dolphins defense and some other notes, we are going to head to break with some ads from our sponsors. Fall always feels like a reset between back to school, busy routines, and shorter days. Finding time to cook can be tough. That's why I love Factor. Their chef prep, dietitian approved meals make it easy to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious, no matter how hectic the season gets. More variety, more meals. Choose from a wider selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp at no extra cost. Enjoy even more GLP-1 friendly meals to support your wellness goals and new Mediterranean diet options packed with protein and good for you fats. For the first time, try Asian-inspired meals with bold flavors influenced by China, Thailand, and more. For more choices and better nutrition, that's why 97% of customers say that Factor helped them live a healthier life. Feel the difference no matter your routine. If I wanted some shrimp and salmon, I would go to Factor Meals. That's what I would use. Eat smart at factormeals.com/3yards50 off and use code 3yards50 off to get 50% off your first box. Plus, free breakfast for 1 year. That's code 3yards50 off at factormeals.com. 50% off your first box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Football season is in full swing, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Are you ready to get off the bench and into the game? Then head over to Underdog to get in on all the action. Whether you're into basketball, football, hockey, or any sport in between, Underdog is the best place to get it in on all the action all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like rushing yards, receptions, touchdowns, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. This week on Underdog, if you went higher on Tua 0.5 interceptions, you won some money right then and there. Download the app today. Sign up with promo code 3yards to score $100 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's right. Promo code 3yards. Underdog. Make picks, win money.
18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
All right, and we are back. Guys, is it kind of delusional to say that the Dolphins might actually go on a run and be, 0.500 by the time they play the Cincinnati Bengals? I mean, Bradley Chubb said it, right? He said, and I quote, "We're all delusional, this entire Miami Dolphins team and organization." He said that everyone believes if everyone plays complementary football, they can do it, they can win, and it's not a delusional feeling. A very, very big quote coming from Bradley Chubb. He had 9 pressures today. That was the most of any edge rusher this week. And defensively, this entire defense from Bradley Chubb to Minkah Fitzpatrick to Ife Melifonwu, I mean, heck, even Tyrell Dotson, they all smothered Buffalo's rhythm. The Bills finished with a negative 0.08 EPA per play, and their rushing attack cratered at a negative 0.52 EPA per play, one of the worst single game marks of their season. And we talked about this Dolphins run defense was atrocious in the beginning parts of the season, and stopping this Bills run game, who has been absolutely potent, and give them their worst single game marks of the season. That in itself was delusional to think in the first half of the season, guys.
Yeah, I gotta say, I hope the graphics department at CBS and Fox have the Dolphins seat in the hunt category warm for them. It is a tradition unlike any other. I mean, with the next 3 games, it's not impossible to think that they could, get a game within 500 here. But when we talk about the defense, I mean, at all levels, we talked about balance and Coach, I really kind of liked what you mentioned about balance between the position groups. And I feel like the defense kind of exhibited exactly that. Anthony Weaver, I think he had a fantastic game plan today. Listen, Buffalo doesn't have a lot of receivers that are guys that are going to get open. Keon Coleman is not a separator. And so I think that probably had something to do with the decision to start a guy like Juju Brents, who's a little bit more physical on the outside, and that kind of paid off. But it also allowed Anthony Weaver to be a little bit more aggressive with his DB blitzes, which we saw quite a few of today. As you mentioned, Bradley Chubb with the 9 pressures, he was phenomenal. I liked, we saw Zeke Biggers today, I think more than we've seen him just about all season long. If we go off of his snap counts, I really liked the play of Jordan Phillips against the run today. I thought he was phenomenal. Jordan Brooks, this was Atlanta 2.0 for him. Every time somebody comes over the middle, he's making them feel it in the passing game right now. He's just playing such inspired football. And I guess that's really the word that I would use for the defense is inspired. Just the difference in energy level from what we had seen in them early in the season to now is night and day. Anthony Weaver's pressing the right buttons with the game plan defensively. And I think it's kind of become a positive cycle where, a lot of these players on this defense are young. You have a handful of veterans between Jordan Brooks, Tyrell Dodson, Bradley Chubb, Minka Fitzpatrick, but a lot of these guys are young. And so a lot of these guys don't know they can do it until they do it. And then you start to see that confidence building in real time with some of these players. And that's a really fun evolution that we've gotten to see over the course of this season defensively. And I think it's something that, they can continue to build on going forward.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the record, the idea of getting to 500, right? I'm going to take the coach speak here and say, one game at a time. But Eric, you are right that it is a tradition unlike any other to see the Dolphins, really make that push for the playoff spot, and then we know how that's ended up in the past. But there is no reason they should not win the next 3 games. If they can play the next 3 games the same way they played the last 3 games, then they're going to put themselves into good position for that. But we've also seen this team lose to bad teams earlier in the season as well, right? So would love to feel like we've gotten over that hump and that we're back to the Dolphins that beat up on the bad teams, but need to see that before I'm all the way in, and I'm talking above 500 and the P word there. But the defense,
or even the T word, coach. Because
yeah,
I don't think we all expected
either way.
the Dolphins to win 30-13. We were expecting more so them to lose, be 2-8, and effectively have a top 5 pick in the 2026.
Would have been a good day for that with the standings.
They would have.
Well, right now they would have, but it seems as if they're on track to win against Washington, against the Jets, against the Saints. Mind you, both those teams, the Jets and the Saints, won. But I mean, I don't think they have the firepower or the ability to do what Miami did to Buffalo today. The Dolphins are not a super duper bad team. They are bad in a lot of areas, and they are good in certain areas. What stood out today was just the consistency overall, even with the defense, right? Their pressure plan today was smart. 8 defensive back blitzes, and they hit a 62.5% success rate on those blitzes. That's creative design meeting execution. Of course, Bradley Chubb and his 9 pressures. Tyrell Dodson had a 40% pressure rate, ranking 6th among all defenders so far. Zach Sealer finally had a sack. Bradley Chubb had a sack as well. But the real difference was the gap control, especially along the left side of Buffalo's offensive line. Buffalo just averaged 2.5 yards per carry on early down, which means Josh Allen had to play hero ball. I know the guys at 3 yards per carry pretty much said that Buffalo doesn't have any receivers outside of James Cook and Dalton Kincaid. Miami's secondary really thrived in shutting down the entire wide receiver corps. Josh Allen had to run around, play like Mahomes, and he got bit in the butt a couple times for it as well. So did James Cook. They forced 3 turnovers, 2 from Josh Allen, 1 from James Cook as well. But, I mean, guys, this defense is starting to light it up a little bit. Slowly but surely, they're stacking good play after good play. And Miami's stars are playing like stars. Minka Fitzpatrick with the PBU on that 4th down that led to a turnover on downs. Jordan Brooks with the forced fumble as well. The other thing which was very surprising to me is that they really attacked offensive tackle Deion Dawkins with those defensive back blitzes. He allowed the 2nd most pressures of all today. He allowed 5 pressures. The only person who was above him was Walker Little for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But Deion Dawkins is not known for letting those 5 pressures. One of them led to an interception in the red zone, which Ife Milifon caught as well. And the others were just pressures, and one of them were sacks given up.
Yeah, I think that kind of Eric's point earlier about the defense and the way that they are figuring out how to play together. I think that you're really starting to see that now with those young guys kind of acclimating themselves to the defense. I thought the front four, even though we weren't seeing a bunch of clean wins up front, you were seeing them do a very good job of those cage type rushes where they were keeping Josh Allen from escaping the pocket for the most part. He obviously had a couple of plays where he was able to do that, but then I felt like they were almost dictating where Josh Allen had to go to the ball. He checked the ball down a lot, and then the defense did a really good job of rallying to that and being able to defend it. Felt like when they were throwing those wide receiver screens, that the defense was very much on top of it, not only from recognizing just that it was a screen, but also where your help was, like knowing where your leverage had to be to contain those screens. And that's something that we really didn't see earlier in the season. As much as we talked about the Dolphins staying on schedule, staying ahead of the chains, felt like the Bills were stuck in a lot of those third and long situations. I mean, there was obviously a couple, third and shorts the Bills were able to convert several times, but a lot of times it felt like they were in long down and distance scenarios where, Josh Allen's always a threat to run, but there's a big difference in the Josh Allen threat to run from 3rd and 3 or 4 and 3rd and 9 or 10. So I think that the defense as a whole is just really starting to gel at this point of the season, and hoping that we can continue to see that even with the newer guys in there.
Eric, do you have a player of the game or the player of the day on the defensive side of the ball?
Oh boy. On the defensive side of the football, there's so many guys I think you could give it to. I think it has to be Bradley Chubb, though. I mean, you mentioned it, 9 pressures, and it felt like it. I mean, he was living in the backfield. There were so many plays. I think Miami's defensive line just so thoroughly outclassed Buffalo's offensive line in this ball game. There were so many plays where, I mean, anytime Josh Allen is doing the scramble drill, you kind of feel like you call 3 holding calls while he's running around back there. But I think Bradley Chubb really took leadership today of the defensive line, and I think you heard it in his comments post game, and you see why. He was one of the guys that they opted to keep around. Granted, doesn't mean anything beyond this season, but I think Bradley Chubb was easily your most impactful defender today. Obviously honorary mentions to guys like Jordan Brooks, like Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jack Jones.
Don't forget Juju Brent.
Juju Brent's the entire secondary. But I do have to just point out, and let me just preface this by saying I love Jalen Phillips. He is fantastic. But does anyone else not find it just a little bit funny that the Dolphins probably finished on those pressures better today than they had in recent memory?
What's surprising is Matthew Judon was also close a couple times as well. I think they missed Chop Robinson and his speed just a little bit too, because in some of those rushes, they were closing in on Josh Allen. It took a little bit of time, but with Chop Robinson, with his speed just off the ball, you could have had maybe one, maybe potentially 2 more sacks on Josh Allen. There were 3 today, could have been 4 or 5 with at least Chop Robinson in there. The other thing, Anthony Weaver called a great game on the back end, specifically for the secondary. There were a lot of umbrella coverages. I want to say I would have to take a look at the metrics. There was a lot of cover 3 used today and a lot of cover 1. I would say on those defensive back blitzes, there was a lot of man match happening and cover 3 zone blitzes. A lot of safety play was used. I mean, Iffy Melifonwu played 26 snaps. Dante Trader Jr. played all but 3 snaps. Minka Fitzpatrick played all snaps. And Melifonwu, Melifonwu was more so nearby the line of scrimmage. Trader was playing deep most of the game. And Minka Fitzpatrick was, sometimes the second high safety, or he was playing as the nickel, which I find his use of versatility on the secondary as pretty much the X factor, because it allows Dante Trader Jr. to get comfortable in coverage, to see everything on the back end. And with Iffy Melifonwu's big body and how he plays more so like a linebacker than a safety, he's able to be an extra body in the run game. He's able to match up with those tight ends a little bit better than Dante Trader Jr. does. And Minka Fitzpatrick can take care of a guy like Khalil Shakir, a guy like Keon Coleman as well. So there was some interchangeable change within those safety play, and I think that was also a big factor in the run game, making sure James Cook did not have a lot of breakaway runs, and having Minka Fitzpatrick and Iffy Melifonwu get dirty in the trenches. Let's connect this back to the bigger picture, guys. A few weeks ago, we talked about whether or not Mike McDaniel's locker room was player-led, whether it was coach-driven, whether if the locker room was lost and no one was talking to him. The takeaway from this win, from what I heard in the post-conference presser, is that the belief is finally being earned, because McDaniel is finally backing up the talk he always does. It's showing in the game plan. It's showing in the metrics. It's showing on how players are responding to the type of leadership after, 4 or 5 straight losses. Belief is not assumed anymore. It's earned now. And Devon Achane has said it. Bradley Chubb has said it. The captains, as Mike McDaniel puts it, have all said it. This team believes right now, and that's what they have.
Yeah, I have doubted McDaniel several times for his ability to keep this team together, and it continues to prove me wrong. Today was a clear indication that he has not lost the locker room by any means. They were playing very hard as a team, and not just that they were playing hard, they were playing together, right? You get some of this stuff where the front office turnover is either imminent or part of it's already happened, and you start, players are not necessarily going to quit individually, because they still have to be able to put good film out there, whether it's for their existing team or for their next team. But I do think there are opportunities where players start to do their own thing some. But we didn't have that today. Everybody felt like everybody on the roster was all moving towards one vision, right? They were all playing together. They weren't fragmented. We will see if that continues. It's always easier to get out in front of the mic and say the right things when you're winning, especially a blowout win versus a very good Buffalo team. If they turn around and lay an egg against Washington over in Spain, then we'll see how the media availabilities sound at that point. But I do think it's clear that McDaniel still has a very solid grasp on this locker room and still has this group, playing together as one unit.
I think the biggest contrast that I've seen over the last few weeks for the Dolphins, going back to really the Cleveland game where they were embarrassed by the Browns, is I got the sense that they decided they were no longer okay with things as they were. Before it was a situation where, adversity is opportunity, which, don't get me wrong, it is. But if you say it enough times, it's kind of just, okay, well, adversity is opportunity. We're 2-6. That's okay. We'll get by it. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. Be indignant. Be upset about this. This is not the situation you want to be in. You don't want to be 2-7 going into a home game versus Buffalo. That's not where you should be. That's not where you expected to be. You know, and I think Mike McDaniel mentioned it, you know, in the press conference. It was a salty week of preparation. Good. You need some of that in the locker room. It can't always be, you know, good vibes and we're all feeling good about this. You know, not every good locker room is a happy locker room all the time. But the key is when there is that frustration, that it's all pointed in the same direction, not at each other. And I think that that's the big thing where you almost saw it go that way a few times this year for the Dolphins. But, you know, I think we were kind of painted a picture of, you know, kind of a coach and a team a few weeks ago that kind of collectively hit their breaking point to where they just got sick of it. And I think that that's been a long time coming. I don't know if it carries over permanently. I would like to see that be the case because I think that I think that this has been kind of a needed development for Mike McDaniel as a head coach. And I have seen real development over the last few weeks in that department.
Yeah, we see it on the sidelines too, arguing
yeah.
with the refs, getting very animated before the day that
getting his chest caved in by Anthony Weaver.
Yeah. and look, it's not all just about vibes, right? Belief and adversity as opportunity isn't just a vibe. It's a behavior in the locker room. It's a behavior on the field. Communication, consistency, the trust in the execution, and the players understanding what comes where and what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be doing their job. This is what they're supposed to be doing, and it will work out. This game showed all of that. And if this game showed it, then there should be a better belief moving forward that, hey, we can do it. Like, that is what the culture and what the story of a complete team is. It's not, you know, exploding out of the gun, getting these lucky turnovers, or scoring this many points. It's being efficient by design. It's getting better as the game goes on, as the plays go, as the drive goes. And that's what separates, you know, good to great teams from mediocre to bad teams, what the Dolphins have been the last 25 years. And everyone talks about complementary football. Coach, it's not just a coaching cliche. It's quantifiable because guess what? You play complementary football, you're efficient, you're balanced, and that balance turns to belief. You know, McDaniel said it. It always starts with leadership. The captain set the tone. Tua, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Minka Fitzpatrick, Zach Sealer, they've been trying their best to set the tone. It's not gone their way the last 8-9 games. But for months, we talk about changing the culture, you know, changing the team mentality. Maybe they needed to lose all those games to actually and change the mentality of all their players. Or maybe they did have to trade Jalen Phillips to put everyone on notice to, hey, if it's not working out, this is what might happen to you, or this is what's going to happen to the team. Not so much in words, but more so in action, in statistics, in how the game is played. Today against Buffalo wasn't just a win. It was proof of a concept that the Dolphins can carry out this vision laid out by Mike McDaniel, that Tua can execute within his limits, that Anthony Weaver can game plan and call plays to put players in position to succeed. That belief is backed by the play on the field, and that balance also builds the confidence.
Yeah, like you said, it's a cliche to an extent, right? But we saw the way that worked today when all of this stuff is working together, right? The run, the pass, the rush defense, the pass defense, the special teams playing complementary. And you're right about the accountability. I mean, look at how long Ethan Bonner got to stay on the field, right? He gave up a long touchdown. He was pretty quickly replaced.
5 snaps
by
for
Jay.
Ethan Bonner today, just 5.
And you do have to have stuff like this happen in the life cycle of a team, right? It's very rare that you can come in riding high and just stay on that wave the whole way through to, the ultimate goal of, winning a Super Bowl someday. It's rare that you can ride that high the entire time. We're obviously not close to that right now. But if you're going to have a player-led locker room the way that Mike McDaniel has wanted to, you're going to have some of what they've had. And like you guys said, it's not that you can't have conflict in that locker room. It's that the guys that make up that locker room have to be able to find a healthy way to work through that, right? It's just like any kind of relationship that when you have an argument, right? You have a disagreement, that's fine, but you got to find a way to be able to come together and find a common ground. And that feels like kind of where we've either gotten to, or at least we're moving in that direction, that these guys are, figuring out what's wrong, what's not working for them as a unique team, and now they're fixing it. And maybe that happened a little bit later than what we'd want that to happen to this season, but as we move forward, if they can continue to build on this, then the hope is that this carries over into next season. Hassan, I know that we talked earlier this season about just how many new pieces are on this Anthony Weaver defense and how we're kind of redoing the culture of the defense, right? So if we can get this stuff sorted out now, we can have this really rough season that we didn't expect in here. That maybe this is the turning point for this group as a whole as we move forward, if they can find those pieces to build upon. And next year we come back and we're able to return some of those pieces and continue to build what feels like it's starting right now based on the way they played the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, this team threw around the word delusional in the post game. Delusional would have been thinking that this game was going to play out in the way that it did. Delusional was thinking that you were going to blow out an Atlanta team that played Indianapolis really well today in Europe. I'm not here to say that this is going to be the start of a big run for the Dolphins, and I don't know. I mean, if there's one thing that we can count on from them over the last year and a half, it's been inconsistency. So I'm very much guarded towards that. But I think that this is probably the most consistent run of good habits that they've had over these last 3 weeks. Granted, plenty of mistakes against Baltimore, but I feel like from a game plan perspective, in terms of the coaching staff, it's been one of the better 3-game stretches Mike McDaniel and his staff have had in a good long time. And going into a game versus Washington with no Jaden Daniels, going to see seeing New Orleans at home, going up to New York to beat the Jets. It's going to continue to test the belief of this team. And if those habits have carried over, then we will be looking at a team that's at least in the hunt come December.
Yeah, if the Dolphins had removed some of their bad habits, such as, untimely penalties, as we saw in the Baltimore game, or some turnovers that should not have been turnovers, the Dolphins easily are not in the hunt. They could be 7-3 with the same record as the Buffalo Bills, 1 game behind the New England Patriots. And we wouldn't necessarily be talking about building a foundation. We would be talking about the Dolphins already having their formula, continuing to adjust, and actually trying their best to make a deep run into the playoffs, but that's not where they are just yet. They might have found their formula for the next couple games, but we'll see how they do and how they finish off the season. As always, I'm your co-host, Hussam Patel, with my two other co-hosts, Coach and Eric. As always, y'all stick with us here on Scouting the Fin, part of the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast feed, also part of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. As always, go Fins, baby.